Howdy, guys. Welcome to night 58 of Big Brother All-Stars. This is Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. Okay, guys, we did it. We had the triple eviction, and quite an exciting evening it was. Let's just pause and reflect on the three house guests that we lost tonight. Kevin, David, and Danny. Cheers to you guys. Yes, indeed. The house is suddenly a lot quieter, a lot fewer people in the house. Let's talk a little bit, just a quick refresher. Now, if you haven't seen the episode that premiered tonight, you really ought to go out and watch that and then come back. Just make sure that you come back. But in case you didn't, let's give a quick refresher on what happened. First of all, as expected, Kevin was voted out in the first eviction of the evening. After that happened, we had an HOH competition. It was a Q&A, true or false type scenario, talking about what Dr. Will had said earlier in the week. Memphis won that HOH. He proceeds to nominate David and Nicole on the block. No big surprise really there. Christmas then wins the veto competition. It was a combination of a balanced beam and having to solve a puzzle at the end of getting across the balanced beams. She just barely beat Nicole. In fact, it looked like Nicole hit the buzzer before Christmas did, and then we found out that Nicole's puzzle was not correct. So Christmas wins the first veto. She does not change the nomination. She doesn't have it, so it comes down to a vote between David and Nicole to go home. In that vote, by a vote of 3-2, David is voted out of the house. Now, the two votes that were against David were Tyler and Christmas. And we're going to go back to that because that created a little bit of some issues after the end of the evening. But David is voted out of the house. Nicole survives the first vote. At that point, we then have a whole new round of HOH and veto competitions. We weren't sure how triple eviction was going to work. This wasn't the Canadian side. This our type. This was different. This was just one more round. So we have another HOH competition. This again is using the same booths to answer a Q&A set questions on evictions and nominations and have-nots, things like that. Tyler wins. This HOH becomes the new HOH in the house, immediately nominates Danny and Nicole to go up on the block. So Nicole was on the block twice this evening. We then have the veto competition. They again use the same balance beams, transferring a puzzle from one side of the beams to the other side. Tyler dominates. Tyler wins that competition as well. When it comes to the veto ceremony immediately following, Tyler does not use the veto. We didn't have any back doors for this triple eviction, which I kind of thought maybe we'd see something, but we don't see anything. Very kind of standard and conventional. So at that point, we now have the final eviction of the evening, and by unanimous vote, Danny becomes our third evictee of the evening. So we lost Kevin, David, and Danny. House is much more quiet at this point, as I mentioned. The feed's cut at this point, and now let's talk about what happened afterwards. For those of you who didn't get back into live feeds, they came back on, I don't know, about 1 o'clock or so, Big Brother time, or was that Houston time? I don't know, guys, it's late. But anyway, the feeds come back on after a couple of hours. We immediately soon learn that we've got a brand new HOH in the house, and the new HOH, oh, this will shake things up. The new HOH is Cody. All right, yeah, Cody won. But you know what? We've got it's all alliance and committees and people are locked together. So it's going to be interesting no matter who is HOH at this point in time. Cody is the HOH. Apparently the competition involves something about holding down buttons while you're removing clothes. They may have done several rounds of it, but it sounds a little bit like the veto competition Take It Off that we did in my season last year during my HOH, where we were on jet skis trying to take off clothes while holding buttons down so our time didn't go too high. But we haven't seen it, so just kind of guessing based on what some people said. But again, Cody won that competition. So now we had a lot of conversations about what he's going to do with that power, who's safe, who's not, and that's what we're going to talk about. Before we do that, house guests got pizza delivered to them, several boxes. They get a lot of pizzas. We only got them a couple of times last year, but they're all stars. All right, they're all stars. In the picture room or the photo room, Tyler and Enzo are talking. This is right after the feeds come back on. Tyler's feeling bad about his vote against Nicole, and he's telling Enzo, saying, hey, Enzo, I just did it because I really wanted to get Danny out of the house. And I knew that if Nicole stayed and she won the next HOH, she would not put Danny on the block. And that's what I was going for. And then he says, plus, he said, I thought the house had flipped. David came up to me and said, you were on board. Cody was on board. And Enzo say, nah, I never said that. I never said that. So Tyler's trying to pin it on David that he said it. And that he thought the rest of the house had flipped. So he's feeling a little uncomfortable that he was one of 2 votes against Nicole, who's still in the house. He did not tell Enzo that he also was trying to work closely with David and thought he had some connections there and that David could work with him. But anyway, so he's trying to cover up and do some damage control. They're talking about the need for the next eviction to try to get out Nicole and Memphis over the next couple of weeks. Enzo just had the opportunity to vote Nicole out of the house, and he chose not to do it. He chose to send out David instead. We're going to find out later the diary room actually asked Enzo about his vote and what led to it. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But their targets are Nicole and Memphis next. In the comic room, Cody, Memphis, Nicole, Christmas. We're not really gameplay here, but Cody and Christmas are talking about how people don't really understand just what it's like to be in the house, even if you're watching all live feeds. And I just wanted to put this in here because I get it. We're at the stage of the game where it is so stressful in there. It's difficult. There's no escaping it. It's just incredibly, it does a number on you. It is stressful. So I get it. That's why I try to stay very empathetic, very positive as much as I can with everyone in the house. Even though there's some I'm cheering for more than others, I try to stay positive with everyone because I do get it indeed. So I agree. All right, so now let's talk about strategy and conversations. In the bathroom, Cody and Nicole are talking. Nicole is crying. She's worried that Danny is going to hate her for throwing Danny under the bus, trying to get the votes tonight. But I think really even the week before to Christmas and others, she really was trying to throw Danny under the bus to try to protect her game. She's protecting her game. I get it. But she's worried that Danny's going to hate her. She, though, is in turn talking about how she hates Tyler. She is so upset with him, and I think it's got to do with him voting against her. Nicole is telling Cody, saying, I am the absolute worst player at here, and if I make it to the final 2, I'm going to tell everyone I don't even deserve to win. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's her strategy. You hear it here. That's her strategy for playing the rest of the season. She's going to tell everyone how she is so horrible at comps, that she's not ever going to stand a chance to win at the end. She's won before. She's going to let herself get drugged to the very end because everyone thinks that they can beat her. And then once she gets in that final 2 chair, if she does, she'll argue that she had the biggest target on her back to begin with as a previous winner and that she didn't even win any comps and her social game still allowed her to get the very end. That's her game plan. All right. She is saying that how much she really would like to win an HOH, though, just so she can get a letter from Victor and hear something from him. Nicole is also talking, in addition to Tyler, how much she hates Christmas, that she thinks Christmas is just evil. And she's talking about Christmas voting to send Nicole home along with Tyler. She and Cody both thought when the 3-2 vote was announced by Julie Chen that Nicole was the one out the door. It turns out Enzo was the difference. I expected Cody and Danny both voting to save Nicole, but it was Enzo who really determined David versus Nicole in that particular vote. Nicole is making fun of Tyler, telling her that he thought the house had flipped on the vote. She's not believing that for a second. Cody is saying that he won HOH to give Nicole a break this week. Well, I'm not sure that's really why he won HOH, but he has been very supportive and very, very extra nice to Nicole as he sees her kind of struggling this evening. So he's trying to take care of her. Nicole does spill the beans to Cody about how tight she and Danny are outside the house. But she says, but you and I, you've always been my number one. But yeah, I was tight with Danny, but you were my number one. Cody is telling Nicole that he wants Christmas out this week because he's worried about how tight she is with Memphis, Tyler, and Enzo. That she's kind of the linchpin. He wants to break her up. Tyler and Memphis at this point are both getting their HOH baskets and letters. They don't get the room because that's already been decided. Cody's got it, but they still get baskets and letters, and they're reading those out. In the bathroom, Memphis and Enzo are talking. They're agreeing that Tyler and Christmas are going to be the nominations today. They're also saying that they want Christmas out. That is their target. Now, I'm not sure if Memphis really would go for Christmas over Tyler when it comes down to it, but talking to Enzo, he's not saying any differently. All right, in the photo room, Tyler is saying that this season is like pizza, that even bad pizza is good. Tyler's obviously never had a pizza with pickled cow tongue on it as an ingredient. And no, they don't taste like pepperonis. It only takes 1 or 2 bad ingredients for a pizza not to quite have the same pleasure as it used to. But now I'm taking the analogies a little too far tonight. All right. Have-nots apparently are still in play. Sounds like this may be the last week, though. Enzo selected Nicole, and now she's complaining that she's having to sleep in the room by herself. So everyone else says, we'll take turns. We'll each sleep up there every night so you're not by yourself. Well, lucky Nicole, the person to volunteer who is up there in the first night tonight or last night is Christmas. And Nicole says, Christmas, you don't have to do it. And Christmas says, no, I'm happy to do it. So I'm not sure it's exactly what Nicole wanted. She's a little upset with Christmas, but the two of them are spending the night up there together. All right, in the key room, Cody and Nicole are talking. Nicole's not really sure why Enzo picked her for a have-not. She's worried that he doesn't like her. Enzo says that she had volunteered last week, so he didn't think she'd be surprised. And really, Christmas and even Memphis are probably bigger targets for Enzo than Nicole is. I'm almost positive of that. Nicole says, though, that a fire's been lit in her, that she's going to repay Cody for dragging her along so far by taking him to the final 2. It's not too early to start looking at everyone figuring out who they want to take as their final 2 to the end of this game. We're there, guys. All right, everyone's waiting for Cody to get his HOH basket and room so that they can go to bed. In a have-not room, Nicole and Cody are talking. Nicole is saying that Christmas is hoping that Cody doesn't put up any girls this week. Nicole's also saying that Tyler and Christmas would be on the block if she was the HOH. Cody's saying that's who I'm putting up just because of the sketchy votes that they both had for David to stay. So that's why I'm putting them up. It's an interesting strategy that's brought up here. Nicole is suggesting that Cody throw Christmas under the bus to Memphis by telling Memphis that Christmas came to Cody and told him all about the second Wise Guys alliance that involved Christmas and Enzo and Memphis. A very interesting thing. Christmas will go ballistic if they do that. Cody is laughing about how happy Danny's going to be to see Christmas and the jury right behind Danny. Yeah, she will be. Enzo comes in, mentions that it's now 3 against 3 in terms of the way this house seems to be structured. And Cody's telling him the plan is to go after Christmas and then Tyler. Cody is saying that Nicole and Enzo need to stay off the block in order to have the votes. It's only going to take 2 blocks next Thursday to send someone home. Finally, Nicole is telling Enzo that Christmas would have lost if he picked her instead of Nicole for the have-not, just because it would have been weak and all of that. All right, in the have-not room, Tyler and Enzo and Nicole are talking. They're talking about how nice David was in the house. That they got along, even though gameplay maybe he was questionable at times. They really enjoyed having him in the house, and I understand that. Tyler saying that, however, he didn't get any hugs from any of the evicted guests tonight. It isn't going to get any better. I told you, hurt feelings from this point on. There are going to be a whole lot less hugs as people walk out the door. Enzo is saying that Christmas made an offensive gesture in the diary room hallway after casting her vote. I won't do it here, but she made a little gesture. She's a little put off, let's say. All right, in the HOH room, Cody and Enzo are talking. Cody knows that Nicole won't put him on the block, and Enzo thinks that voting to send David home should now help him with Nicole as well. They're thinking that if Memphis wins next week, Tyler and Nicole will be on the block, and even if one of them comes off, Memphis will still go after the other person that's still up there. Enzo's telling Cody to tell Nicole that Cody will take her to final 2. Would he? I don't know. They're worried about how Memphis is going to respond when Christmas is on the block and potentially if she goes home. Is he going to be too upset with them? They're mad at Tyler again for his vote against Nicole. Enzo is saying that, hey, Tyler told me that everyone was flipping. That's what he thought. Cody says, nah, he's lying. I told him right beforehand in the bathroom to go for David, to vote out David. So he knew that wasn't a plan. And then finally, in the diary room, or we find out, according to Enzo, before he shut down, he says the diary room asked him while he was in there, said, hey, you talk about all these big moves. How come you didn't vote out Nicole? And Enzo at that point says that, hey, I didn't want to mess things up with you, Cody. Tells Cody, I didn't want to mess things up with you. It's why I didn't make that big move. Cody at this point says that I really want to send Christmas home, but I'm kind of 60-40 right now sending her home just because I'm so much more worried about Tyler as a competitor than I am as Christmas. But I'm still leaning towards sending Christmas out the door. So there you go, guys. 2 hours excitement, and now we've got the repercussions happening this evening. We'll have the nominations today, and then I'll be back in 24 hours. We'll talk about the nominations and what's going on. Y'all have a fantastic Friday. Cheers, guys. SKD 143. Bye, guys.